welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today is Valentine's Day and I got really lucky that my upload day landed on Valentine's Day, so I figured we could do some type of special for today. So today we are going to be making a Valentine's themed dragon. Anyways, let's get started. Okay guys, so the first thing that we need to do to make our rose dragon is we need to start on the sewing for the body. So I'm going to go over the pattern real quick and then I'm going to show you guys how to put all the different pieces together. So right here are all the pattern pieces that we're going to need. So I have the main body, I've got the legs where they disconnect so we can use them for the inside parts of the legs. I have a wing pattern drawn out so we can make a pair of wings for the creature. And then I have two strips up here. One is going to be the belly and the other is going to be the back of the dragon. The belly piece is going to be a little bit wider and it's also going to be tapered off at the end. Both of these pieces are going to be a lot longer, so what we're going to do for each of them is we're going to measure for the belly, we're going to measure the under part of the dragon and stretch the pattern out, and then for the top of the dragon we're going to measure that going all the way down the tail. Okay, so I'm going to start with the sides of my body first. I've got all the different pieces cut out, and my idea for the pattern is to make it look like the tail is a rose, and the stem of the rose travels down the side of the dragon. So we have this long strip of green, and it's going to go along the very top of the body, and then I want a little bit of green around the head, so we're going to add a lighter green up here. So the first bit of sewing that we need to do is we need to put our side pieces together. Now you'll notice that the fur for the main body is a little interesting and it's super fluffy. We're going to shave a lot of this down. If you notice, it's a white fabric with red tips, so we're going to leave some of the tips available, but most of this is going to be shaved down to where you just see the white fur. And then right here we have the pieces for the belly and the back of the dragon. I decided I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle to the belly of the dragon, so I'm going to be using my Reversible Sequins fabric for this. So it's a nice pink going one way, and then when you go the other way, it's a nice little white color. And then the back of the dragon is going to be the same color that we're using for the body. So all we need to do right now is add a little bit of the green that's going to go around the neck at the end of each of these pieces. Next, we're going to take the inside parts of the legs and we're going to sew them to the main body. So we're going to take all these pieces, we're going to lay them out on the sides of the body, and we're going to sew down the front of them only. This is going to be another piece that has a wire frame, so we're going to leave the back of the legs all open. After you're done with all the legs, we can take that strip of fabric for the belly and we can sew everything together. So we're going to put one side of the body on one side of the belly, and same thing for the other side. Okay, so that's the sewing for the main body. We have a few more things that we need to glue and sew together, and then we're going to move on to the clay pieces. So to go along with the whole Valentine's Day theme, I'm going to add a pair of wings to the dragon that are just little tiny things, just to make it look a little bit like a Cupid dragon. So to make our tiny wings, we're going to be using felt, and we're going to be layering them to make it look like layers of feathers. So I showed you the pattern for the wings earlier, and I used that to cut out all these different pieces. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take our layers and we're going to glue these together. So I'm going to start with the felt layers, and then the outer layer is just a soft fabric, and we're going to wrap this around the top of the wing. When you're gluing everything together, we're not adding a whole lot of glue to the very top. We're kind of trying to make a pocket, that way we can have a wire running through this so the wings can stand up on their own. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on the rose for the end of the dragon's tail. Now honestly, if you wanted to skip this step, you could just buy a fake rose, but I wanted to make one out of felt just to see if I could. Now this was actually a lot simpler than I thought it would be, it just has a lot of layering to it. So what you're going to do first is you're going to pick the color that you want your rose to be. I decided I wanted to go with red, but you can go with honestly any color that you want. So the first piece to our rose is a long strip of felt. And what we're going to do is we're going to be rolling this up. So at first I'm going to roll it nice and tight, but as I get closer to the outer part, I'm going to kind of mess it up on purpose just to give it a more organic feel. Once we have that rolled up, I'm going to take my needle and thread and we're going to sew the end of it so everything stays together. Now the next layer to our rose is very similar to the last, except instead of having just a plain strip, one of the edges is going to be cut kind of rounded in different sections, so you kind of have a bunch of half circles on the edge of it to imitate rose petals. So we're going to take our new piece of felt that has our little like half circles at the end, and we're going to start wrapping it around our original piece of felt. So we're just going to go all the way around, and then we're going to take our needle and thread again and start sewing this together. So we're just going around the very bottom of the rose. Okay, so that's the middle of the rose. Now we're going to start with the more individual petals. So I have 3 different sizes. I have a small, a medium, and a large, and I have roughly about 6 or 7 of each petal. If you want to make yours larger, you'll probably have to make one more size of petal a bit larger and make more petals. But for mine, I'm just going to stick with this. So I'm going to start with the small petals, and I'm going to do the same thing that we have been doing, and I'm just going to be layering these on. So I'm going to take one and I'm going to sew it to the rose, and then I'm going to take another one slightly overlapping the previous one, and we're going to keep sewing and just keep doing that until we need to get to the larger size, and then we'll move to the even larger size of petals. As we get down to our last 3 rose petals, we're going to be gluing these into place instead of sewing them because I don't want any stitch marks to show. So we're just continuing the same thing where we're overlapping the rose petals as we put them on, except this time we're going to be using a little bit of glue instead of needle and thread. And then once we have everything in place, we just got to adjust the little petals to make it look a bit more rose-like. Okay, so I think we're done with most of the sewing pieces other than putting everything together, so now we're going to move on to making the clay pieces. Okay, so for the clay, we're going to start on the face first, and then we're going to move on to making the feet. So what we're going to do for the face is we need to start off with a base. So we're going to take a large lump of tin foil, and we're going to shape it into a rough idea of what we want the head to look like, and then we're going to completely cover this in clay. Once you have it completely covered, you're going to smooth your clay out and just kind of roughly define the shape of what you want your head to look like. Once we have everything smoothed out, we're going to start adding the details to the face. So first thing I need to do is decide where the eyes are going to go. So I'm going to kind of push my thumbs right into the clay and mark where I want the eyes to go. And then we're going to take some balls of clay and we're going to put those right in place, kind of like we're putting eyeballs right in the sockets. After we have the eyes in place, we're going to start building up some eyelids with some strips of clay and just start blending that together into the rest of the face. So my idea for the dragon is I want to give it kind of a flower headpiece. So kind of make it look like there's a bunch of roses around its head, and then maybe give it a pair of horns. So we're going to add the horns first. These I made a while ago and I never got around to using them, so they're pre-made and we're just going to be pushing them into the back of the head, make sure they're nice and even, and then we can move on to adding the gems and stuff. So the gems that I want to use for the dragon are these really pretty red stones along with a few pieces of glass that I found. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to make a bunch of clay decorations, and then we're going to also place these pieces randomly throughout the top of the head, just to make it look kind of like flowers. So I think the red stones will be kind of like the center of what will look like little roses. So I'm just going to add some little decorations all the way around the horns, throw in some stones and stuff here and there, just kind of mess with it until I like how it looks. And then after I'm happy with how that looks, we're going to move on to continuing the face. So I'm going to move on to making the mouth and the nose now. So we're going to use our tools and kind of just draw out where we want the mouth to go, and then we're going to refine the shape for it. And then for the nostrils, I kind of wanted to have a spiraling effect to make it kind of pretty. So I'm going to just take a long strip of clay, I'm going to lay it out and just kind of bend the clay inwards to create a nice little spiral. After that, I'm just going to add little balls of clay here and there to make some scales, and then use my tools to make more scales kind of around the eyes and around the chin. Okay, so I'm pretty much done with the face. I'm really happy with how it looks, and I'm going to bake it at 275 Fahrenheit for roughly about 45 to 55 minutes. So for our hands and feet, what we're going to need to start off with is a wire frame. So I made a very simple one, and I decided that I wanted 4 digits for each hand and each foot, so that's why there's going to be 4 wires. You're welcome to do just 3 digits. I've done a lot of dragons with just 3 digits, or you can go all the way to 5 if you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the claws first, and we're going to add a little bit of clay to the ends of each wire, and then just kind of roughly shape it into kind of a point with our fingers. After we have all of our claws in place, we're going to bake this for just a little bit, probably just 20 minutes at 275 Fahrenheit. That way we don't have to worry about bumping any of our claws or messing anything up. After we have those baked and they've cooled, we're going to start on the bottoms of the feet. So we're going to take a bunch of strips of clay and little balls of clay and just completely cover up the bottom of the wire frame. We're going to blend everything together and just kind of shape it, add a few wrinkles and bends so it looks like the fingers actually move. And then once we're happy with how that looks, we're going to bake this again at 275 Fahrenheit for probably 30 minutes this time. And then once that's out of the oven, again, we can start on the tops of the feet. So we're just going to take little balls of clay and we're going to layer them to make some scales. For the tops of the hands, I decided that I wanted to add a little bit of a decoration to match the face, but I'm not going to do the same thing with the back feet. We're going to leave those just normal scales. So we're going to get all of our scales in place, use our tools to straighten them up, and then we're going to bake our feet for one final bake at 275 Fahrenheit for probably about 45 minutes this time. Once everything is out of the oven and is cooled to touch, we can start on our painting. Okay, so the first bit of painting that we're going to do is we're going to take some white paint and we're going to start primering everything white. The reason we're using white is because the main body is going to be white and we want to match that first. And then we can build up all of our colors to go along with it. So we're going to do the face and the feet and just go over everything, make sure everything is completely coated, and let that dry. Once that's dry, we can start adding our details. So I'm going to start with the face, and I think I'm going to add kind of a pink highlight here and there. This is just to brighten it up and make the face kind of stand out a bit more. And then the little beak that we have kind of on the mouth, I want to go over with kind of a pearlescent paint. I'm going to actually go over a few different spots with this just to add a bit of a shine to it. So for the flowers that are going to be around the horns and the top of the head, we're going to start with green first. That way we can get the leaves all done, and then we're going to go over this with our reds to add the little flowery colors. So it's just going to be easier to do the leaves and then to do the flowers on top of it. Now, one thing I realized when I painted this is I shouldn't have put paint on the glass pieces because I tried to scrape it off to see if it would work and it just didn't. I didn't think about that ahead of time, and I should have, because the texture of the glass is so rough, everything just stuck to it and wouldn't peel off. Now the gems, on the other hand, they're nice and smooth, so the paint peels off just fine, but with these I decided to give up on cleaning them up and just paint over them. So I'm going to go over the leaves with green and the flowers with red, and then we're going to move on to painting the eyes. So the eyes, I decided I wanted to be a nice light blue, so I'm going to go over them with that color first, and then we can figure out where we want the pupil to go, kind of draw that on and fill it in. And then once the colors for the eyes have dried, we can go over and add a little bit of a white highlight to it. Lastly, I decided I wanted to have a gold touch to this, so I'm going to go over some of the scales that I have with a gold modeling paint, and then I'm also going to be painting the horns gold. After we're done with the face, we're going to move on to painting the feet. So the first thing we're going to do for the feet is we're going to do what we did with the face, and we're going to add a pink highlight to the bottoms of the feet. So we're just going to kind of go over the little tips of the toes, and then we're going to kind of blend it into the white. So we're going to add the pink highlight to all of the feet, and then we're going to move on to painting the front feet first, and then we'll do the back. So for the front feet, since they're a little bit more decorative, of course we're going to have more colors to them. So the little kind of wiggly bit, we're going to do kind of green to match the headpiece, and then I'm going to add a little bit of a lighter green, and then I figured the fingers would look cool as red. So once we're done painting everything, we're going to let it dry, and then I'm going to go over everything with a nice layer of resin to help protect the paint. That's going to have to dry overnight, and then the following day we can start on putting everything together. Okay, it's the following day and we're going to start putting everything together. So I have a very simple wire frame and we're going to start adding our pieces to it. So I'm going to start with the rose first, and we're going to glue this to the end of the wire. And then once that's in place, I'm going to add a little bit of leaf work. I cut out these little leaves and I'm going to glue them around the base of it. After that, we're going to take the fabric body that we sewed together, we're going to flip it right side out, and we're going to put the wire frame inside of it. Make sure all the wires for the legs are sticking out of the holes for the legs, and what we're going to do now is we're going to take those wires and our clay legs, and we're going to wrap our clay legs to the end of each wire. So we're going to get those in place. Once those are in place, we can take the fabric for the legs and start gluing it around the ankles of the feet. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and then what we can do next is we're going to take our needle and thread and sew up the back of them. After that, we need to add the head to the piece. So we're going to take the head and we're going to add some glue into the back of it, and we're going to take the wire for the neck and we're going to push it into the back of the head, hold it into place and let it dry, and then once that's dried, we can take the fabric for the neck and start gluing it around the base of the head. After that, we're going to take the strip of fabric for the top of the dragon, and we're also going to be gluing that to the top of the head. We're going to let that dry a little bit, and then we're going to start sewing up the neck. So we need to sew up both sides, and we're going to stop roughly where we want the wings to go. Now we're going to add our felt wings to the piece. So we're going to take those wings and we're going to run them over the wires for the wings, and we're going to glue them in place. After that, we're going to take the fabric for the body and we're going to sew it to the bottom of the wing and the top of the wing. And then once we have the fabric for the body sewn around the wings, we're going to start stuffing our body, and then we can continue sewing down the body of the dragon, stuffing it as we go until it's all closed up. After we have him stuffed and closed up, the last thing we need to do is give him a haircut. So I'm going to take my hair trimmers and I'm just going to go over all of the fur until I like how it looks. Okay guys, and that's how I made a Valentine's Day dragon. I had so much fun with him. I'm going to have him along with a bunch of other creatures in my Etsy shop, so make sure to check the links down below if you want to buy anything. I really hope you guys enjoyed today and have a wonderful holiday. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!